Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
you can join in.
Okay.
All right, we are here. We're live. There we are. So today we've got Micah Childress joining Greg and I to talk about pricing. Micah, how are you, man?
I'm doing great, Paul. How are you doing?
Doing good. Thanks for being here. And we're pretty excited about today's live stream. So, Greg, hi, how are you?
I'm doing great. Wonderful.
All
Good to see
right.
you guys.
So, all right, we're just gonna kind of jump right into this, okay? Because we've done, Mike, I don't know if you've tuned into much of these, but we've done some high-level philosophical stuff. We've talked about like, the emotional aspects of pricing when you're sitting down with a customer who might have their own ideas, their own needs. Like, I've got to get X, Y, and Z out of the house, so that means our price has got to be here. And we've talked through all of the elements of pricing because one of the things that I've known to be true for a long time in my own personal real estate was I can have the right price all day long and I can still lose the listing. Like it's
Yeah.
more than just getting the right price. But today, I think we want to focus a little bit on how you get to the right price, and then also how you run kind of end to end on your listings. When you get a phone call on Thursday and they want to list next Thursday or 2 weeks from now, Micah. I guess before we jump into that, should we intro Micah at all more than this? We need to give some Micah's history at all.
Well,
I feel like I'm off to the races here. I don't have
let's
to go too
ask, we'll
fast.
just do a couple questions. Micah, how long have you been in real estate?
11 years.
So I still remember our initial conversation where you asked me if you thought you could make enough to equal your salary as a college professor out at Grand Valley, I believe.
Hmm.
And so clearly, just answer this. Has it worked out for you?
A little bit. Yeah. Not too shabby.
So I think
So
Micah, and I don't want to give out too much of your personal information here, but I think one time you told me that you might have multiplied your income by 10. Yeah, that's
Yes.
incredible. Yeah, that's incredible, man. Congratulations.
Although, yeah, maybe that's a sign of how low my old salary was. But yeah.
I don't know, man. I think that's
just,
impressive.
yeah, it goes
Any,
both ways, right? Yeah.
yeah. But
So anyway, well,
so
Paul,
Micah, you have been, but you have had many years where you've been in and around that 100 transactions per year.
I've not eclipsed the century mark.
Yeah,
So,
getting
but
close.
been around. So Dave and I have been either right above or right below 20 million in
Yeah.
volume since 2018, give or take.
Okay. Awesome. So you sell a
Every
lot
year,
of real
every
estate.
year.
You sell a lot of real estate. You've been in a lot of scenarios. You've priced out a lot of homes. So this is why you're here. Um, so Micah, let's just start here. And also I want to kind of leave a teaser here. If we have time, we had an agent email us a trouble property. And so if you guys want to hear how we would look at an agent who's got a listing that's been on the market for, I think collectively 90 days on market, and she's already had a couple price reductions and she's not sure what to do here. We're gonna jump through that and kind of a live kind of like run through the pricing on that. So, but first, Micah, before we jump into that, I just want to leave that as a teaser. We'll do that in a little bit, hopefully. But Micah, let's just jump into what you do. Like, run us through your process when you get that first phone call to list a property.
So I think the one of the first things Dave and I do is we'll ask them what updates they've done, and we try to exclude, we say excluding painting. Because I'd say, 70% of the time, there's a past listing that we can look at, right? To give us a rough idea of, hey, if it sold 5 years ago, we can get a rough idea of what it looks like. So we ask them, have you done any major renovations, whether it's a kitchen remodel, a bathroom remodel? Have you put on a new roof? Kind of what's the age of the furnace, that sort of thing. Because obviously, if they've added a new roof, new furnace, and a master bathroom model, that's going to significantly alter what the value was 5 years ago.
Hmm.
And so we try and get a handle on what are the renovations that they've done.
And that's
And
via phone call, Micah, like before you ever step foot in the house?
yes, yeah, or typically we'll email that to them because then that gives them the chance to sit there and think. Or if it's a husband and wife, they can both kind of go, oh yeah, we did this. And so and if I put them on the spot on a phone, something's going to get forgotten. And it's also nice to have it. So then I have a written record too,
Hmm.
because, absent-minded professor, sometimes that happens. And so
Yep.
it's nice if I have a written record of, okay, furnace 3 years ago, roof 2 years ago, kitchen remodel 5 years ago, that sort of thing. And so
Okay.
I want a written record of it too, because that'll help me when I go and look at the comps of kind of, exactly what I'm staring at.
Yep.
So I want to know what renovations, if any. Now, sometimes, I mean, half the time is nothing, right? You know, and again, I always say excluding paint, and they still tell me we painted a few rooms.
Yeah.
You know, so I want to get an idea of what they've done to it since they bought it.
Okay.
Good. Next, what's next?
So then from there, right, we set up the appointment. You know, and it's nice if I want both. If it's a husband wife, I want both of them there. And so typically, I want to just walk through the house first because as well, so I guess I should say before I get to the house, Dave and I will look at comps, you know, we'll pull up whatever is available on the MLS. We also always look at Zillow because 9 times out of 10, that's what they're looking at. And in
Mhm.
case you're not aware, if you scroll down, you know, I say don't pull it up on the app, pull it up on your computer, and you can scroll down and you can see what comps they're using. And
Mm.
so Zillow, I believe the study was done a few years ago that was like Zillow's within 7%. Now that's plus or minus 7%. So on a $500,000 home, that can be a wild inaccuracy. Sometimes, I mean, sometimes it's oddly spot on, down to the dollar, and sometimes it's wildly inaccurate. So I just did one last week for a cottage, and Zillow was pulling a cottage from a different lake. And that one had no pictures of the interior. It had, you know, kind of been like a FISBO type deal. And so it's like, you can't count that. You know, it was $1 million. We have no clue what the inside is. It was a different lake. And so that's where, you know, Zillow was using that to kind of bump it up.
Mhm.
I think it was about 15 grand more than what I am recommending. And so always go to Zillow because again, 9 times out of 10, that's what your clients are looking at and that's what they're using for their value. And then see what Zillow is using because sometimes they'll have new builds in there, which like, you know, if I have a 70s ranch and there's a new build around the corner, that won't count. Or it'll have something waterfront in there, or it'll have a different school district. And so, you know, the difference between Caledonia and Forest Hills might be 50 grand. And Zillow just goes, they're the same.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
always check out to see what Zillow's comps are because I'd say
And
4 out
so
of 5
Micah, you'll
times you can poke a hole. You can poke a hole in at least one of the comps Zillow is using is garbage,
so
whether it's
you
too high
go
or too
in
low.
right. So you go in, Mike, assuming they've already looked at Zillow. They already got this, like they've got this in their head already. That's like the range they're going to be in. So then you actually go prepared, being like, "Hey, I pulled up Zillow's, but I kind of disagree with this comp and this comp that Zillow used." So you basically just render the Zillow's estimate almost just. You tell them this is not an accurate estimate right off the bat.
If it is accurate, then I just leave it alone,
Yeah,
you know, and I'd say, hey, you know, Zillow got
maybe
it
they
right or
got it this
whatever.
time.
Yeah,
Okay,
but if I disagree, I will print it off this estimate. I will print off, especially if I'm going to be higher than this estimate.
Yeah,
I'll print it off so then I look a little bit more like a hero.
yeah, right.
so I've got a quick question here. So do you ever go outside of Zillow? Do you look at things like, say, the RPR, which is part of the Mishrick deal? Have you ever gone there? Have you ever
I've
gone?
I've had bad experiences with, you know, just trying to, you know, looking at those. And especially a lot of times when agents will tell me, you know, I'll go to a listing on the buy side, and an agent, you know, I'll think it's really high, and an agent will go, "Oh, RPR said this," and it's like, well, yeah, but what did you say? And so no,
Mhm.
I don't usually look because A, the client's not seeing that, and B, I don't want that to color or influence my assessment. I want to kind
Yeah.
of do my own. And now maybe, you know, seeing this estimate might, but I'm assuming Zillow's wrong as much as it is right. And so I skip the
But
RPR.
you're calling Zillow out because that's the elephant in the room. That's the one your clients have most likely seen.
So what
That's the
about,
best mousetrap.
Yeah.
you look for any of the legal stuff to see if they got proper ownership? There's no state liens, federal liens. You look at
If
title?
if it's like maybe there's been a death or divorce or, you know, something where it's a little bit atypical, but I would, you know, I would say probably at least half my listings are people where I sold it to them. So then
Okay.
I know we cleared title
Mhm.
last time. And then yeah, the other half, usually there's a recent say, you know, within the past 5 or 10 years that they bought it. And I do look at the tax records. to see are there any recent sales or, any of those things. So, but if it's something where it's a little bit different, like a death or divorce, I might try and see if Star can get me a,
Right.
pre-listing package.
Where do you go for the tax records?
The easiest spot, so sometimes the BSNA, but the easiest spot, so if you log into Flex, and they added this maybe a couple years ago, and I'm just gonna, not that you guys can see but if you pull up the listing up at the top, where it says like showing time or documents where you can get the seller's disclosure, there's realist tax information. And so that will open a new window, and that's phenomenal because it'll have whatever past sales have been in there. It'll have, and it'll have the tax, property taxes and that sort of thing in there. Sometimes it'll have mortgages in there. So that's nice to know going into it of, are there open mortgages? What's the tax situation? Or, what's the last time it was sold, or those sorts of things.
Okay. So when you're whittling through your comps, like what's your process as you start just looking in and around the area? Like what are you looking for? How would you begin targeting a house?
I cheat with that, search comparables feature that Flex added,
Okay.
a couple years ago, but that's usually just, I have to be, all they give you like a third of a mile, and then they maybe give you, within beds and baths.
So
And typically
it's kind of a quick like boom, here's it took
that's
place.
just to get me, the new window. And then from there you have to adjust because, I think Jeff talked about this of, neighborhoods, especially within Grand Rapids, right? Block to block can be very different. Or, like I live in Granville, and so within a third of a mile, you could have something 90s built and something 70s built, or something 30s built and 70s built, and though I wouldn't use those in comparison. And so then I just use that to open up the new window, and then I'm gonna, draw my own shape around whatever neighborhood, or I'm gonna go wide, or I'm gonna end up setting multiple blocks of, these are all kind of 60s and 70s built, whether it's ranch and two-story. And then usually I will try and maybe monkey with the bed and bath. I don't want to compare a one bed, or excuse me, a one bath to a three bath.
So Micah, how many properties are you trying to whittle down to?
Ideally, I want at least three comparables. I don't want more than six, but I want somewhere in that 3 to 6 range, just because that. And I usually will try and do the last 6 months of solds, just because going back more than that, it's a different market. I know appraisers won't look at that.
Of those 3 to 6 comps, what's your what's the percent of like sold comps to like an active comp?
I try to only do solds if I can. If it's an area where there's new construction, you need to see what is direct competition, especially with so many builders now offering all sorts of, 10 grand of free carpet, or, we'll buy down your rate 1%, or, whatever the incentive that the builder has right now. But usually I want to, I might get an idea of what the actives are potentially. But
maybe if you felt like you had a pricing problem, would you figure out like, okay, here's my ceiling. This is the lid.
If there's a situation where maybe they've let slip of, hey, we're thinking here, then I will look at the actives, because I want to know, is that realistic, or is there,
or are
like
they just
4
sitting
houses?
at that price point? Right.
There's 4 Rockford ranches in the city of Rockford that we're fighting against, and so we're just going to sit like they're going to sit if we're going to be at the exact same price.
Typically. Yeah, I think that's really good, Micah. That's how I would probably approach it too. I think that's smart, because solds are all that matters. That means someone wrote a check, someone closed a property. The actives are just pie in the sky at this moment.
Right.
Well,
Although it does give you an idea of, if we're going to be listing at the same price as them, are you truly better? Or,
yeah, right.
Like we have to differentiate ourselves.
How do you handle showing them, or do you show them what is trending in the market right now? Because, we were in a market there for, 12 years straight up, right?
Right.
You couldn't miss the price basically, because the market behind it, right?
Right.
So I don't think we're in that market right now, are we?
No, I
In
think
most parts of the country, I'm not aware of people getting, 50 showings and 10 offers, all cash over asking price anymore, right?
no, I think if that's the case, you've drastically underlisted and probably have cost your seller 20 grand.
So how do you share today with what you think is going on in the market? when you're sitting with a seller and you look at, it's not going up as fast. We don't have as many buyers. How are you handling that conversation?
So one of the things I'll bring up, so I will print off the comps and I'll bring them with me, and it has that days on market on there. And what's one of the things I'll talk about is, hey, the years of we list it and we have, 30 to 100 showings, and that is gone. And so Dave and I walk them through the idea of, hey, man, 3-4 years ago, let's say, the property was, you could list for like a 299 and you could maybe get that 350. That is gone. And so if it comps out to 350, so what I'm telling them now is, let's just list for 350, rather than try and like, monkey and let's hope for a bidding war. Let's just list for what is market. And, within a week or two, we'll get a very quick idea of whether we're at market value or not. And so rather than try and monkey and go low and get a bidding war and who knows, I'd rather just hit the mark right now, as opposed to, and that's where I have the conversation with sellers. And I steal this line from one of the guys at Peloton where he says, I make suggestions, you make decisions. And so that's where I tell him, hey, all right, the market's telling me 350. You're saying 379. We can list for that, but just know it's going to be a month, and we're going to sit here and we're going to get negative feedback, and we're going to have to reduce. And if you want to live through that and constantly cleaning up your house and constantly not knowing when showings are going to come or if they're going to come and being frustrated by living in this limbo, that's up to you.
Mm-hmm.
What I'd rather do is sit at 350 because that's the number I'm comfortable at. So I leave that up to them if they want to do 375, but I make it clear I don't have any confidence it'll sell for that. I think it's gonna be a month, and then we need to reduce price. And so if you want to live through that, then you may.
When you make that comment that you say you don't think their price is realistic, how do you protect yourself to still get that listing? Because when I hear that, I'm going, oh, so you don't believe in my number? Why would I hire you?
Yeah, can I flavor that too? So that's one thing we see a lot of right now, Mike, is like if you're competing, and you might not necessarily be competing in many of these situations, but if you are competing, we're seeing other realtors, tossing out like a higher price, kind of dangling the carrot. How do you get around that?
So I just had this, and I've got a property that I listed last week that is high, where I was competing with a top 10 agent in GRAR. And they said, well, we had him out to the house and he was fine with this number. So I said, I'm okay to list it for that. I don't think it's going to sell for that. Here is what I think it's going to sell for. And, we're like, 40 grand difference between that. And so, I'm fine listing for that number, but I'm just letting you know, I don't think it's going to sell for that. So let's do it. I'll work hard. And these are past clients of mine. So I said, hey, I'll work hard. You know me. I want it sold as badly as you do for as much as possible, but my confidence level is very low in this number.
And you got that, and you did get that listing, Micah?
Yes.
Why do you think that you got it? I mean, do you think they bought that line? Do you think because I know that Tammy Roma repeats it, like, if you don't list at my price, I'll find someone who says they believe in my price. How do you, did they like you better? Like, why'd they pick you?
Because I'd worked with them before. I mean, it had been a handful of years, but I'd worked with them before, and obviously this other agent hadn't. But I mean, we've lost listings that way. Dave and I have, where we go in. What I normally try and say is, if I get this, and I had the sense that they were leaning in my direction, because they're going through a divorce, and so I think having me there as a past agent is helpful rather than bringing in somebody new. But when I'm going in blind, where I don't know them and they don't know me, I try and cushion that a little bit more. Although I do typically talk about, I'll bring up past stories of, an agent will say a number just to get your business, and then you're going to be frustrated because you're going to have believed them. And so I'll usually say, I'd rather lose the listing and be honest than someone else tells you the number you want to hear, and in a month or two you're going, dang it.
Yeah.
We should have listened to Micah. And so
when you go down that road, Micah, how long will you go before you start pushing? and say, hey, look at guys, I mean, it's been 2 weeks, it's been 3 weeks. You know, we're not getting any showings or we're not getting any offers. Where do you go?
I try and if we're gonna go ahead of time, I try and say, hey, if we don't get something, within 2 to 3 weeks, we'll need to lower the price. So I try to throw that out there before we list, just so they've got a rough idea of what the timeline is.
Mm-hmm.
And then I usually want it to be at least 2 weeks, even though it's sitting there and it's kind of dead space. I think too aggressive makes you look vulnerable.
Yeah.
And so these particular clients that were high right now, it's only been a week and they were already like, we got to jam down. And it's like, no, like, hang on, we're going to look vulnerable if we do that. So we have to now sit at this price that you selected. But I laid out our timeline for, okay, in X amount of weeks, we're doing here. And then X amount of weeks, we're doing here.
Mhm.
So I try to prep them of where we're going.
One of the things I used to do when I'd get in that situation where I knew the other agent was out there buying the listing, so to speak, as we say, I would say, hey, by the way, did they show you comps that would prove that higher number that they gave you? Did they, I mean,
Hmm.
because I would love to know what they are, because I mean, maybe they've got a set of comps that I'm not aware of, but I doubt it. So I would kind of call them out a little bit to say, well, how did they prove that value to you?
Sure.
Yeah,
No,
I
that's
think that, yeah. Go ahead, Micah.
good.
I
I
was
was just
gonna
gonna say, no,
go.
that's a great idea. And sometimes I will ask for those comps, but in this scenario, they were leaning towards me, and I didn't want to push any
Yeah,
further. I wanted to get the
yeah.
listing, and that's
Mhm.
where Dave and I were chatting about this yesterday. Of like, man, I hate the agent that comes in high and whatever, but like that thing is gonna sell within a month or two. It will
Mhm.
sell, and that typically, I mean, we're seeing a couple of expireds, but for the most part, they sit for a month or two and then they sell after a couple of price drops, and then they end up at the number I gave them, right? So
Yep.
Hey, Paul, I
Yep, and
don't know
this
how
is
many
what this is
questions.
where I think that Jeff Blahnik talked about this, and we've dealt with this. And guys, as the market shifts more and more towards a neutral market, we're going to see more and more of this. It's going to become because people are going to be like sellers are going to be optimistic and wanting to hear really nice numbers. But I liked what Jeff said the other day too, Mike, and I'm curious what you think about this. He said he will rarely walk away from a listing regardless of the price. He'll take an overpriced listing and then he'll work to get it priced down. What about you?
yes, depending on how far, if it's within 50 grand, yes. If it's more than 100 grand, now again, this is, if it's 100 grand on a million, it's the
Yeah.
same as 50 grand at
Percentage
500,
wise,
right?
right?
But like, yeah, if you're within 10%, yes, but any more than that, if you plan on reducing, every 3 to 4 weeks, depending, if they only give you 3 months. So if I was going to do that, it would have to be definitely 6 months, but that doesn't mean they can't fire, that doesn't mean they
Yeah,
wouldn't
exactly.
fire you. Right. I tried to get, it was like 2.1 million dollar listing, and he was at like 2.8. I was like, it's too far. It's too far. And I feel good about not taking it because
Yeah.
he's on his third agent in the last 3 months.
Ooh.
So if the gap is too far, man, I mean, we would have loved, to have a
Yeah.
$2 million listing, and like,
Yeah.
everyone on social media would just assume we sold it and
Yep.
whatever. But like, he's already on his third agent and the price is the
Yeah.
same and it's
Yeah.
not working. And so
Yeah.
if that gap is too wide, I think
Well,
you just got
and
to
you
walk
read the
away.
client right, it sounds like too. You kind of saw who you were talking to here and you realized this is gonna go nowhere good. We're not gonna get this price down at all. He's never gonna reduce the price.
No, he already fired everyone I recommended to, stage his house and
Mhm.
do contracting work. He fired all of them. So I was like, he's gonna fire me too.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we just walked
So,
away.
Paul, do you want to move in? I don't want to mention the agent's name that we're going to talk about, but I think maybe we should segue into that right now.
Yeah. So let me pull this
The
up.
stage.
So I'm gonna pull this up real quick.
Can you do it without names?
Yeah, I can do it without names. I don't have any name on. I have no name on here right now. So, all right. Let me share my screen here real quick. Okay. So, give me a second. Okay. All right. Can you guys see this?
Yes.
you see it?
Yep.
All right. I think that it's gonna show on the live stream. I don't know.
It's
I
showing right
assume
now.
so. What's that?
I think it's showing.
You guys can all see it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So this property here, is I'm gonna pull up so I can see it. Okay, so this property here on Riverton, 12651 Riverton Road in Grand Haven, Michigan. All right, so it's this person listed this property for 525,000, you said, Greg
Yep.
and Micah?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
And it's been on the market for 90 days. Now they did have a price reduction, so that's inaccurate. So it was 90 days in the market. They started at 525. They're currently at 499, and that is a price per square foot of 255.64. There's 2.2 months supply, 79 days on market, and the AVM ranges for this property put it like AVMs being like Zillow, batch data, RPR, all those things. They put the AVM at 487 to 515, and that's just the automatic valuation. So she's smack dab in the middle of that valuation. She said her initial comps showed it was worth 580, and they came down over time down to this 499 number. She's stuck, doesn't know where to go. So you two start with Micah. We talked about this briefly. You made some good points on this. Do you want to share what you noticed?
Yes. So when I went to pull up comps, there are several active new builds that are in this neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
And they are I didn't dig deep enough to see if it's the exact same floor plan, but it's the exact same square foot, which would lead me to believe it's probably the same floor plan. And those are like 479.
Okay.
And so um, my personal thought on when you're dealing in an area where there is new builds, you have to look at what the actives are, because somebody who's going to buy a new house is like somebody who's going to buy a new car, and they'd rather opt for the new build, even if it's more expensive than a quote unquote used house. And so it's very important, in my opinion, to look at actives for new builds, especially when builders, depending on the builder, are offering all sorts of incentives potentially.
Right. And so that's a great point, because as the market gets more and more competitive, these builders are also competing, and they're dropping their prices. They're lowering that lid down, right, to get their places sold. So, okay, so Micah, you said there's a couple of new builds, same square footage, similar finishings for 480, basically.
Yes.
Okay. I noticed on here when I was looking is that I went a different route. I looked at a couple of properties nearby. So I saw, like over here, I saw that the subject property here on Riverton Road right here. There's one right in the same neighborhood that sold for 555, but it's on waterfront. It's a touch larger. It sold for 555, but it's on the water, and it's got a 266 price per square foot, and it was a very nice home. Really, really nice home. And so I just don't, I feel like at 255 a square foot and not being on the water, this one's not on the water. I felt like this was maybe seeming rich to me here. And then there was a couple others here. So these are also very close by. This one on Wildview. This is a finished lower level. So it has another 850 square feet finished down, right? And that's cheaper than her home in price per square foot. And that has a finished lower level. This one, her subject property does not have a finished lower level. And this one on Wildway, or on Windway here, is much larger, obviously, sold for 525. It has an extra 600 square feet on main floor living space. There's no finished lower level. Main floor living space is very expensive. So I left that at 205. So I kind of looked at these numbers here. I kind of play with these price per square foots, and I kind of came up with a range of like, probably she needs to be in the 240 to 245 dollars per square foot, which probably puts her. I think the home is probably in this range here, probably in that 470 range is where I would think it's realistically located. But that's kind of where my valuation, that's how I would approach the valuations personally. But
Question
anyways,
is,
I think 500 is way on the top of the price point.
okay, well, Micah, let's go to you. How in the world are you going to get, I don't care if your home is 1 year old and it's in mint condition, I don't think you can get the same as a brand new house.
No.
There has to be some concession when you're
The
competing.
the only way I think you get the same as a new build is if you're at the same price, but you've got grass and landscaping and whatever, right?
Mhm.
Because that's worth 20 grand. And
Mhm.
so I think if you're at the same price, but you have, grass, landscaping, and sprinkling, then then I think you could compete. But I think you have to, at the minimum, you have to be at the same price. You might have to be a
Yeah,
little
and
bit less.
location, like maybe like view, location, something like that could play a role. Um, But yeah, I think so Micah, what do you think? How overpriced do you think we're at 500?
Uh, I think she's got to be below, because now we're looking at, it's almost 5 years old, which um, might not show much, but in my experience, right, 5 years is plenty of time for there's dings and dents and the carpet, the carpet tread, right? You can tell in the master exactly where people walk to the bathroom and the closet and whatever, right? And so I think you've got to be below those other brand new builds that are sitting at 480. I think you've got to be, 469 instead of
Yep.
479, something like
Yep.
that.
Yeah, that's kind of where I landed too, man. I think that anyways, I thought it would be kind of cool for us to I'm not sharing anymore, but I thought it'd be kind of interesting for us to like to run through those numbers and kind of play with it a little bit. I really liked your approach of finding what the new builds are going for because it kind of puts that kind of like cap on it a little bit. It sort of says, hey, like this is probably the top of your range here if you can get new build for that price point. That was an interesting
Well,
perspective.
the other thing I did even before I looked at comps was I looked at the last time it had sold, right? And it sold in 2021 for 345. And so then to be at 500, and I thought, oh, maybe the basement's finished, but there's no basement finished. And so I feel like if you're pretty active in real estate, based on you can almost ballpark something, you should be able to ballpark something of like, hey, it sold in 2018 for this amount. You should be able to go, all right, hey, that's up at 125 or 150 or right. You should be able
If you
to
know
kind
your
of
market well, if you know your market well and you know
yes.
the appreciation, you should be able to pinpoint that.
But yeah, since 2021, up a buck 50 with no finished basement, that's too much.
hmm hmm
Just in my opinion, without having looked, just in my opinion.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's your at a glance.
yes, yeah. You should be able to look at when the last time it sold and for how much. And
Oh, you're muted there, Greg. Greg, you're muted there, buddy.
So as we kind of bring this around here, do you have like do you tell stories about like if they that first offer comes in and you think it's a pretty good offer and they're like, hey, it's only been on the market a week. Do you go into do you have a spiel?
I think I don't typically have a softball. I will tell you, I just used this this past week. One of my son's friends' grandma died, so but we know the family pretty well. They live in our neighborhood. They're on the same soccer team, all that sort of stuff. And it comes down to it's got 4 kids involved in this now selling grandma's house. So there are, and one of them apparently is a licensed agent, although the trustee, which is the one I know the best, said, hey, he doesn't do much business. And so the kind of the analogy I used was, all right, hey, you've got a cavity, and you go in to see the dentist, and the dentist goes, the last cavity I filled was 3 years ago, but I remember how to do this, right? It'll save you money. I don't think anybody is going, yes, right?
Mhm.
They're going to go, all right, hey, for $50 more, where's the dentist that like every day is filling cavities? That's the one I want. And so that's the little spiel I gave them of, you wouldn't be comfortable working with someone that hasn't done something for 3 years or does something once a year. They're not familiar, especially, now that this is an estate sale and there's all sorts of extra things that are going to be involved. Uh, yes. Will you end up paying me more? Yes. But will you make more on the house? Yes. Will your experience be better than having, a toothache for the next month? That's what it's going to be like dealing with somebody that doesn't know what they're doing.
Here's
And
another
so,
one. Here's another one. So you get done, you've nailed it. Their heads are nodding, like they've agreed with the whole time through, and they go, well, okay, so one of two things. They're like, well, we've got another person coming out tomorrow, or we just need to stop and think about this. How do you handle that? Do you just say, oh, okay, I'll give me a call when you're done here?
I, I try to push, depending on the situation, how well I know them. I try to just say, hey, what would make you comfortable for, just canceling that appointment? I'll call the other agent. I'll tell them, you're working with me, so you don't have to deal with the awkwardness of that. But that direct approach is something that I hate. Right. I mean, my wife and I bought windows at our old house a couple years ago, and window salesmen are right. That's that thing of like, this price is only good until I leave.
Right.
It's like, why wouldn't that be good in 12 hours or 24 hours or, I don't know. So I hate that approach. For my wife and I, that makes our skin crawl. And so then I try not to use that too much. I think I just go, I usually give them the spiel. Honestly, I'll usually say, hey, I'm not a window salesman. I'm not going to ask you to sign right now. What I want you is to do is to be comfortable working with me and knowing that, right, I'm a former professor. I'm not a salesperson who's going to squeeze you into something. I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear just to get the listing. And so, and I might reference 200 5-star reviews on Google and Zillow, or, whatever it is, of like, to this date, I've only had 5-star reviews. People love working with us because we are honest and we communicate. And I can promise you, you'll get that service with us. So I usually end up letting them have the next person come in, and we're probably batting 500. We don't always get those listings, and I don't know if somebody's cutting commission, or I don't know what they're doing, or telling them the number they want to hear. I usually end up letting them, for better or worse, I let them have that, as if I can, twist their arm and make them not have that meeting. I try, and sometimes I'll go for it. Sometimes I'll just let them have the meeting. And I feel like as often as not, me not putting the squeeze on them will make them feel better about me, rather than if I, try to put the gears to them and then they feel like, oh, we feel pressured to work with this guy.
Yep.
Yep.
Well,
Micah, I think it was great. I think, if you wouldn't mind, Micah, like, could I tagged you in a comment here, and maybe there's some other questions that show up on this video thread on Facebook here. If you wouldn't mind, like, just touching base, if people had a couple quick questions for you, if you wouldn't mind responding,
Sure.
that'd be awesome. But no, Micah, I think, what I really like about your approach and what I like about this business is that it doesn't have to be rocket science. It doesn't have to be some magical, mystical land that we're living in here trying to figure this out. It's really pretty straightforward. You're a straight shooter. You pull the comps. You have an honest conversation. I think anyone listening today probably walked away with something valuable. So I really appreciate your time and you sharing your tips and tricks with us, man.
Well, my favorite mixed metaphor is it's not rocket surgery.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, not rocket surgery. Definitely not. So,
hey, are we gonna see it tomorrow at Con Ed?
Yes, I'm going to be there.
All right, wonderful. I want to encourage everybody. I know we're in the wintry mix right now up here a little north. I'm not sure what it is in Grand Rapids right now, but hopefully we'll get I think we've got close to 500 people that are going to be there tomorrow. So
Yep. And for those of you watching from the sunny state of Florida, they treat Con Ed differently down there. They don't really let brokers give Con Ed. They think it might be a conflict of interest. I don't know why. They don't really let us give Con Ed like we do up here. So we are gonna, I think I was just talking to Tim and Danielle down there in Florida. So we're gonna come up with some way to do a Con Ed event down there. So we'll be getting more information to you on that. So, all right, guys.
I think that, Paul, like you've said it, on the other live streams we've done, that this is kind of what we're trying to present is kind of a universal. It isn't relative just to one state.
No, I was just on a Zoom today, chatting with the agents down in Tampa and St. Pete, and we were talking about pricing, we're talking about listings. Same exact conversation. It's the same exact stuff. It's human nature. It's pricing. It's strategy. It's the same all over the country. So. That's the goal, is that these conversations are universal. So, and I think they are. So, thanks, Micah.
Yeah, no
Thank you,
problem.
Mike. Have a great day.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
All right.
Catch y'all later.
See ya.
See ya.
Yeah.